Good morning on this Sunday, January 26th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. The 45th president is now the 47th, and lots of Georgians headed to Washington for President Donald Trump's inauguration. Also, the Laken Riley Act heads to the desk of President Trump after passing the House and Senate, and the trial of the former prosecutor accused of meddling in the investigation of Ahmaud Arbery's killing gets underway. Melita, Martha, Theron, and Brian are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
President Donald Trump's second inauguration marked the coldest presidential ceremony in more than 40 years and was moved indoors. As promised, he got right down to business, signing a number of executive orders. So let's get right to the table here. Martha, and talking with your fellow Republicans who made the trek to D.C., what did they say that the mood was like?
Celebratory, positive. Perseverance. They used that term a lot because it was cold. It was hard to get around. And they were disappointed that things got canceled and moved around and that kind of thing, of course. But I think if they got tickets to the balls, that made up for it because that was kind of fun and being able to do that. So it was a pretty heady time. It reminded me a little bit of George W. Bush's in 2004 because that was very celebratory because it was the first big one after 9/11, and so people were ready to get together and have a good time. And it also snowed at that one. So yeah, people are very, very happy.
Well, there, and I know a lot of Democrats are not very, very happy, but we can all appreciate the pomp and circumstance, as we witness the kind of the peaceful transfer of power.
It was, and the president's administration and the transition team did that, promised to have a peaceful transition of power, and also President Biden and Vice President Harris' team did that as well. I'm very happy to hear that people enjoyed the inaugural because I remember vividly in 2009 when Barack Obama had his inauguration. It was very, very cold, very packed and outside. I think the thing for me, Lori, is that we look back on the first day. Last week I sort of asked and requested that President Trump actually reach out to the middle and try to actually be more patriotic and bring the country together. A lot of things that he promised us that did not happen on day one. He said he was going to reduce the price of eggs. Well, I went to the grocery store. I didn't go to Trader Joe's. I went to Publix. Checked both stores. The price of eggs are still up. He also told us he was in the war in Ukraine on day one. Last time I checked, I think the war in Ukraine is still going on. Also, if you look at all of his executive orders, not one executive order that's going to deal with, I think, was one of the two top issues in the campaign, which was inflation. Yes, he dealt with immigration. Yes, he pardoned 1,500 people who many of them attacked police officers, but did not deal with the principal issue that the American people wanted him to deal with, and that is reducing the cost of inflation.
Well, Brian, as promised, the president did get right down to business and signed these executive orders that Theron had mentioned, and we can talk about those. But now I think between former President Biden and current President Trump, it was like, you get a pardon, and you get a pardon, and you get a pardon. I mean, it was unbelievable.
The Biden pardons of his family, and of course of like 2,500 other people before in the weeks before.
And the preemptive pardons.
And the preemptive pardons for his family. That certainly gave a lot of cover to President Trump coming in and doing the J6, because the J6 pardons are one where Trump doesn't have universal Republican support for that. I think Republicans at large would be like the ones who didn't break into the Capitol, the ones who didn't act violently. Yes, they've been through enough. They can get out. We even saw Governor Kemp this week speak about the fact that when it comes to people who hurt police, this is a little more controversial. Biden certainly gave Trump a lot of cover with what he did in his pardons. But a lot of what Trump did on day one, he didn't stop the Ukraine war, and I think we always kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. I think we kind of baked in that wasn't a real promise. But he did focus on immigration. But that was one of the two main things in the campaign, immigration and the economy. And so he really hit immigration hard. I think there's a lot of popular support for what he wants to do. I think that it is 100% supported by the Republican base. And the other one is the economy. And I think in the coming weeks, I think we need to talk less about J6 and the 2020 election, which we heard on Inauguration Day, and we need to talk about what are we going to do to lower cost on Americans, because that is what he's going to be judged on in addition to immigration.
Right, yes, but right now this week we'll talk about the J6 because President Trump, Melita, he pardoned almost all of those January 6th defendants on Inauguration Day. Now, many were surprised, but this is something that he mentioned in December that he would take early action on.
Right, he did say that he would do it. I think he surprised people by the scope of those pardons because 140 police officers were injured on January 6th with everything from firearms and an explosive device to stun guns, flagpoles, even campaign signs. And to pardon all of those people who were the 600 or so who were involved in violence against police officers means that Republican legislators don't have a leg to stand on about being tough on crime. And to see some of those people pardoned, now talking about buying guns and stocking up on ammunition and staying in touch with their gang, and to have the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers feel so empowered by these pardons is something I think we will see regrets later.
You know, I think Brian's point about cover is an important one, and I'm not going to get into every convicted murderer that Joe Biden pardoned, but one in particular was a person who killed 2 FBI agents. And Connecticut, a very blue state, are having protests in small cities around Connecticut because these were people that lived in that community. This was a person. So I hear what you're saying, Melita, but what I'm saying is there was a lot of cover given in this tit for tat, and I don't like it, okay? But I think, you know, pardoning somebody who has murdered 2 people and is on death row that killed 2 FBI agents is, I mean, that's pretty bad too. So let's just look at the pardon situation. Let's look at the process of how we do it. He dwarfed Jimmy Carter in the pardons that he gave. Jimmy Carter was the #1 guy before that because of all the draft dodgers that he pardoned. So, you know, I think there are bigger issues.
Well, I agree. There are bigger issues. So let's talk about some of those. Actually, he repealed a executive order by basically 20 million Americans who have access to health care. He repealed that. He also dealt with affirmative action, right? That federal, something that Lyndon B. Johnson put in place to try to eliminate affirmative action when it comes to federal contractors. He prioritized renaming the Gulf of Mexico and a mountain Denali. I mean, these are the things that he was focused on. And so I just think that it was a missed opportunity for the president to deliver on things that he said that he was going to do. He offered Putin a tariff. Right, that's his solution to deal with the Russia and Ukraine crisis, and Putin laughed at it. And so I think that while I was here last week hoping for diplomacy and for him to represent everyone, it clearly was an opportunity for him to feed his base. Now, to B-Rob's point, and Martha is saying important issues, what does he do kind of going forward to broaden that reach to the American people and really address those core issues?
All right, I want to bring it home a little bit. Do you want to respond real quick?
I just want to say really quick, whatever you think about the J6 pardons, Trump told us from day one he was going to do this. From as soon as he got in the campaign, he goes, I'm going to do this. He said it in the primary. He said it in the general. He brought it up everywhere he went. So Americans went to the polls knowing where he stood on that, knowing what he was going to do, and he won.
But real quick, his vice president said they were going to do it by case-by-case basis, right? That's what his vice president said. That's what the Fox pundit said leading up to the inauguration. He did not do it by case-by-case.
But President Biden said he was not going to pardon his son.
Sure. He did. That's fair. That's fair,
Keeping
Lord.
it fair.
Balls and
All right.
strikes.
Atlanta's former mayor announced that she resigned from her position on President Biden's export council on January 4th, one day before President Trump claimed she was fired as part of his removal of over 1,000 Biden-era appointees. Theron, she did have some choice words for the president, saying he was a day late and $1 short, that you can't fire someone who had already resigned.
You know, it's one of these things where if you look at these, pictures of the former mayor who has gone on and, taken care of family, worked honorably for the president of the United States, got a key appointment, one of 4 that President Trump mentioned. And of course, she resigned from the position because she knew that the incoming president was not going to not only keep her and other people, but it was a great opportunity for Keisha Lance Bottoms to clap back on the president, which she has a history of fighting against. Let's get to what she also announced. I don't know if I'm moving too fast.
Well, we'll get there, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I think
that's how I'm weaving this in.
But I would say this though, it was funny because I think that had the Trump folks knew that she had actually resigned, they probably would not have given giving her this platform. It kind of reintroduces her to the public in a different way. And yeah, she had some choice words for him, and it was funny. And now she's gotten all this national media about it.
Well, let's talk about her announcement that she is considering a bid for governor of Georgia. Brian?
I think it's going to be a really tough road to hoe. Now, the advantage she has is she has more name ID than many Democrats do from being mayor of Atlanta. And she does have this national profile that Biden helped to amplify to some degree. But she didn't have a term of office that inspired a lot of confidence moving forward. A mayor of Atlanta, their fundraising base should be the Atlanta business community, the biggest concentration of wealth in the entire state, probably the Southeast. The Atlanta business community doesn't like her that much. And so one thing that's going to really be hard for her is raising money and looking back at some of that term, a time of rising crime in Atlanta so bad that Buckhead tried to succeed, and a time when property taxes were really going up. And her post-ups on Kemp about COVID restrictions haven't aged well. We will see clips of her attacking Kemp for opening our economy, and Georgians are with Kemp on this.
I will say there was a lot of head nodding in agreement with you, but I won't say who was nodding in agreement with you.
It was bipartisan. It was bipartisan, I'll say that.
Well, Brian made some excellent points about her popularity level amongst the business community. I've talked to a couple of people who basically say she doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. And the business community has solidly lined up behind Attorney General Carr with $2.2 million raised in 40 days. So Democrats have to really figure out who their person is going to be in this governor's race and get solidly behind them. And I'm not sure, or her, and I'm not sure that person has yet stepped up to the front. And I don't think it's Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Martha?
Well, we did have snow in New Orleans this week. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Anyway, I think, Keisha Lance Bottoms is complicated, okay, because she didn't have great support when she left office. It's a complicated situation. She maybe have done honorable work, but it was a kind of tricky presidency because she at some point is going to be asked that question, did she know about the president's cognitive decline? Because that issue is not going to go away because it's going to come up related to the pardons, who wrote those pardons, because the family one I think he wrote, but I think there was a bunch of other ones that he didn't know what they were. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think it's fair to say she has a complicated relationship.
Look, she when she left office in 2017, she said she was not done with political office while she was not going to run for mayor. So I'm not shocked that she actually wants to re-enter the game. The second thing is I think it's a little disingenuous to just totally disqualify her. I mean, she is a former mayor. She did work for the president of the United States of America. And look at the national attention that she's getting with this announcement. The last thing I would say is this. I do believe you'll hear other people announce very soon. You got Lucy McBath. We got to figure out what Stacey Abrams is going to do. State Senator Jason Estevez has been having some meetings. He's thinking about it. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
All right, everyone, coming up, Georgia's 2 U.S. senators vote yes on the Laken Riley Act. We'll discuss next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The Laken Riley Act is one of the first bills sent to President Trump for his signature after the House and Senate gave their approval. The bill is named after the nursing student who was killed while jogging on UGA's campus. It mandates ICE to detain illegal immigrants who commit certain crimes like burglary and shoplifting until they are deported. Darren, we knew early on that Senator Ossoff would support the bill, but we weren't sure where Senator Warnock stood, and it turns out he voted for it.
You're right. Just to recap, you're right. We knew that Senator Ossoff had came out and said that he was going to look at the bill and really see if it was something that he was going to vote for. But Warnock said he had concerns. And so Senator Ossoff immediately came out and said he's going to vote for it. Warnock had concerns. I think what it really boiled down to, well, I still fundamentally believe it does not deal with the core issue with our immigration system, that is that we truly need true, full, comprehensive immigration reform. But it is something that was needed. I said that on show before. And then two, you can't be a Georgia senator and not support this horrific, death that happened. I mean, not support the death, but I'm saying support the fact that Congressman Collins wanted to make sure that he highlighted that unnecessary and horrific death, to make sure that you do something about making sure that bad people on the street who are here illegally do not go out and kill more innocent Americans.
So Senator Ossoff didn't come on immediately, but he came on before Senator Warnock. And Senator Warnock, I'm thankful that he came on when he did. And I do think, though, that what happened here is we saw some interesting movement. I mean, obviously when this event happened, our two senators should have gone to Mike Collins, the congressman in the area, and said, what can we do to help with this? That's not what happened. But what happened, the machinations behind in the Senate, is basically the bill that got passed was Mike Collins' bill, but it was replaced with Katie Britt's bill, and so that it made it a little more palatable for more senators to get on board, and then came through. But it doesn't matter. I've talked to Mike Collins about it. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. He's going to get the credit. The bill's going to get through. Katie Britt really helped with this too. It would have been nicer if you had seen our own Georgia senators really advocating for it more so than we did. But I thank Senator Warnock, because I was very hard on him for his delay on this, and I got a call from his office saying, I hope you saw what he did, and I did, so I want to thank him for that.
Melita.
Well, the original bill had focused only on theft and nonviolent crimes. The Senate version strengthened the bill to include assaulting police officers and other violent crimes. So the Senate amendments made the bill stronger in many ways and more focused on what needed to happen, I think. But in both chambers, it passed with bipartisan support.
All right, I want to move on because we have a lot to talk about. Attorney General Chris Carr, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, has raised more than $2 million in his quest to become governor. Brian, that's a respectable amount so early in the game.
Well, with Attorney General Carr getting out early in November, he had to post a big number, being out there alone, in order to get over this bar of credibility. We can assume that he's going to be taking on candidates that have deep pockets, including Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and some candidate to be named later who's maybe a self-funder, maybe some outside business person that we're not even thinking about right now. That field is going to get bigger because being governor of Georgia is pretty darn cool. I mean, it is like the best job in the world. Way better than being a U.S. Senator. Just ask Brian Kemp. That's why he's not going to run. So, but this was a big haul for Chris Carr. He worked extraordinarily hard to get here, and really he's got to take advantage of these next few months as Burt Jones is in the session to go out there and get some of these grassroots people and get them on the team and expand, because he can't raise during the session, right? So that was part of the issue here. But like, this is a little man story, right? Because here's somebody who can't self-fund. So that's why he had to get out early, and I think people understand that. This is a guy who lives in a ranch house in Dunwoody.
Quickly.
But he also worked, and his wife worked, for former U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson, who's one of the most popular political figures in the state. And so he had a real strong base of people to call up who knew him, who were willing to give him support.
This week, we also learned State Senator Emmanuel Jones will challenge incumbent Congressman David Scott. Theron, your take on this one?
Look, Senator Jones announced this early. Congressman David Scott has served the 13th district honorably for a lot of terms, and I think that Senator Jones is a respected member of the Senate. For him to announce this soon means that, kind of similar to Attorney General Chris Carr, he's going to have to get his name out there and raise money. So we have to see what the congressman will do, but all my sources tell me that he is fighting every single day for the people in District 13. He has had some health challenges as well, but I think that the senator is definitely a formidable candidate.
Well, and he voted against the Laken Riley Act, which I was very disappointed about. And I do think, I say hooray, because I think primaries are good. I think having contested primaries are good. One of the things I hate about where I live is a lot of times the seats are determined in the Republican primary and there's no Democratic opposition. I like competition. I like for people to be able to have multiple people in the Democrat, multiple people in the Republican, and then fight for what you believe in. That's the way you get the best candidates. That's the way you get the most people out to vote. So I say to Emmanuel Jones, good for him. I'd love to have him on the program.
All right. Up next, the trial of the former prosecutor accused of meddling in the Ahmaud Arbery investigation begins. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
The trial of former prosecutor Jackie Johnson, accused of meddling in the investigation of Ahmaud Arbery's killing, is taking place in the same Georgia courthouse where Arbery's killers were convicted of murder in 2021. Johnson was the district attorney in Glynn County when Arbury, a 25-year-old black man, was chased and fatally shot by 3 white men in February of 2020. Melita, just your take on the start of this trial.
Well,
jury
they've
selection?
called about 500 people in the jury pool, and they're having trouble striking a jury because in any small town, and Brunswick is a little bit bigger than some small towns, but in any area like that, a lot of people know the family of the defendant. And because there's been so much media coverage of the earlier trials, some people on the jury, potential jury pool, have been excused because of their preconceived opinions. And those preconceived opinions have been on both sides. Some of them called it a witch hunt, and others talked about how that she thought a lot of prosecutors were crooked. So you've got some real varying opinions, and it's going to be tough for them to strike a jury.
Martha?
I'm so glad that this case is coming to trial. I think that when this kind of behavior happens among a prosecutor, that there has to be a payment for that. And also there are, the town of Brunswick, of course everybody knew about it. They had prayer vigils every single day for months and months and months with no violence. Okay, so I think that this is going to be an amazing case to watch, okay, because it is going to have these different points of view that people are going to have depending on where they are. But we can never affect the anniversary of his death is coming up soon. Ahmaud Arbery should not have been killed, and he should have gotten more cooperation to respect him in death than he got from that prosecutor initially. So I'd never be on the jury, okay?
Well, and Martha, I appreciate you making those comments because we remember, and I'm so glad you reminded us in your package, Lord, that was 5 years ago. And what happened on this show was us coming together as Republicans and Democrats, all saying that this was another horrific, unnecessary death. I also want to compliment Attorney General Carr for eventually, it was slow, he didn't jump on it right away, I think that's fair, B-Rob, but removing this prosecutor who tried to cover up the evidence for these 3 men. And then lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to the Glenn County community, but they have a wonderful young mayor down there, Cosby Johnson, who was the mayor at the time, coming in, trying to keep that city together. And Martha, you always remind us about those prayer vigils.
I do. Yeah.
There's so many pastors. And so this is a community who still today is still trying to figure out how they can coexist when you had 3 white men, nothing other than just pure racism, target a young black man who they said was in a house, and they chased after him and shot him and killed him. I mean, we have to be this very specific about it. And so are we better now as a state? I think so, but there's still a lot more challenges. I think that this case, to Martha's point, this woman should definitely, justice should not be spared on her. I think we need to throw everything we can at her because what she did was unnecessary. And she'll have a chance of a fair day in court, but this is going to bring up some very, wounds that we think that we've healed from in the state.
Yeah, there's still a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the local case is something we need to look at. We need to make sure that she actually gets the most fair hearing in the most fair venue that is possible, because this is so controversial. This is so divisive. This is somebody who didn't do what a prosecutor should do, but not someone who pulled a trigger or hunted down Ahmaud Arbery. So it is a unique case. Obviously, a jury does need to see this case. And let's not forget, and I want to get to Theron's point, that if this had just been left to the locals, this wouldn't have gone anywhere. When this was brought up to the state level through social media largely, it was Attorney General Carr, it was Governor Kemp. Both of them stepped into the fray and made sure that justice was delivered. They went down there and met with those local folks, met with the chamber leaders, met with the city council members, and that's how we got to this point, was the state guys coming in.
Good background, everybody.
Yeah, but we also remember, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, she was removed, then there was another person placed, and it wasn't until that third person that was come in, then that's when the state stepped in as well.
Okay, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Brian, we'll start with you.
My winner is Matt Towery from Insider Advantage. He got a shout out from Sean Hannity in front of President Trump this week during that interview for getting the results right in 16, 20, and 24 in those elections. So right there in front of the president, that was a really cool moment for him. The Cobb County Republican women who had Martha and me this week come talk to them about some stuff going on in Georgia. And my loser is the parents who had to stay at home on Thursday with no precipitation whatsoever, no ice on the road because of lazy public officials who canceled school. It's ridiculous.
Well, it was cold. Okay, Theron?
Real quick, I know we were planning to get to this in the segment, but Atlanta Medical Center has announced this week that they're going to move, Wellstar, along with Integral Group, the old Atlanta Medical Center has move forward to demolish that unsafe building. So I want to compliment the mayor and also Wellstar and Integral Group, and I think they brought in a company named Firma, so it's going to move forward. And then lastly, I just want to thank everybody for being back at the Capitol, all the pages, all the people, the doorkeepers. I know we talked a lot about what happened last week, but these women and men wanted me to remind the public that they come to that job every day to serve, and they do a really good job. So thank you to all the doorkeepers and the staffers
And
down
they
at the
show up
Capitol.
in the cold, too.
They do.
And as I said before, I'm going to make Senator Warnock my winner this week because I've been very hard on him about the Laken Riley bill, and I try to be fair. So he gets to be a winner this week, Senator Warnock, and you can come on the show too. All right, and I'm going to make my other winner Donald Trump because while he may not have reduced the price of eggs, he worked on regulation, he worked on investment, and he worked on energy production.
All right,
He's a winner.
Lolita?
I'll make the life of the Rabbi Alvin Sugarman a winner because he has been a monumental force for good in Atlanta and a great moral leader for the community. And so I extend condolences to his family and his widow. And then I'm going to make my loser Congressman Mike Collins because he went after Episcopal Bishop, the Right Reverend Mary Ann Buddy.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Have a great week. See you next time.